News 13's Victoria Dunkle is live in Asheville. Victoria, we are talking about hydrocodone, of course.
Absolutely, and we're talking about stiffer rules and regulations when it comes to getting the prescriptions filled. Did you know in 2012, doctors wrote 125 million prescriptions for hydrocodone, which goes by the brand names of Vicodin, Lortab, and there's generic versions out there on the market as well. The changes are impacting thousands of people who rely on these painkillers. Now, here's what we have uncovered. The reasoning for this: back in August, the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency, announced that it was going to change hydrocodone's classification, making it a Schedule II drug. That stiffens the regulations and the controls over it. So what does that mean for the person, one of the thousands of people who rely on these painkillers every single day? Well, that means that they're going to have to change the way they get their prescriptions filled. In fact, starting today, if you had an existing prescription, it is now invalid, and that means a trip back to your doctor's office for a handwritten prescription. No more calling it in or emailing them to the pharmacists. It will mean some added steps, and the pharmacists do expect to see their drugs, their pharmacy stores busier than ever with people waiting. But it is a move that's being made because of an extreme spike in the abuse of these drugs. It's not people who have legitimate prescriptions for using them. It's folks who are getting their hands on them on the black market or taking them out of the medicine cabinet at home and abusing them. In fact, this is one of the most one of the highest causes of drug overdoses in our country. I was doing some research a moment ago, and the CDC says that pharmaceutical drug overdoses account for 55% of overdose drug deaths in our country. Coming up in our next half hour, a few more of the rules and regulations on what you need to do if you fall into this category where you're going to need a new prescription to get your painkillers. Reporting live in Asheville, Victoria Dunkle, News 13.
Rule changes for the thousands of people who rely on prescription painkillers.
News 13's Victoria Dunkle is live outlining the hydrocodone changes. Vic?
Well, there are a lot of changes that are involved, and they involve people needing new prescriptions starting today. Here is what we know. The reason we're in front of the hospital here is because ER visits tied to abuse of this type of drug led to 2.5 million ER visits in 2011, with more than 1.4 million of those tied to pharmaceutical drug abuse or overdose. So these are the most commonly prescribed painkillers, and that is why the Drug Enforcement Agency DEA took action just a few short weeks ago to reclassify them. Starting today, they will move from a Schedule III to a Schedule II drug, and that puts them in the same category as drugs like morphine and methadone, and it also allows for stricter regulations. So what does that mean for a person who has a legitimate need for this painkiller and has been receiving it by prescription? Well, it means you have to get a new prescription, and it has to be handwritten by your doctor. In the past, up until today, doctors had been able to email or call in those refills for you. Now you will need to go and get a written prescription and deliver it by hand to the pharmacy. Now, the pharmacists we spoke to said that they do expect to see an increase in the number of people waiting for prescriptions and showing up to get these filled, but they do say that it is going to be worth it because it is going to help possibly cut down on this staggering increase in the number of people who are overdosing by abusing these drugs. They're getting it on the black market, people are selling them on the street, or they're also getting it by just raiding the medicine cabinets at home. In fact, they have been leading to 55% of all drug overdoses in the last CDC numbers that were released. Coming up in our next half hour, more details on the changes that are taking effect starting today. Reporting live in Asheville, Victoria Dunkle, News 13.
New rules for those taking the most commonly prescribed painkiller in the U.S.
News 13's Victoria Dunkle joins us live in Asheville. And Victoria, we're actually talking about hydrocodone.
Exactly, and it's actually one of the drugs that leads to more than 2.5 million trips to the ER for either abuse or misuse of the drug, and most of those are from pharmaceuticals like hydrocodone. So what is happening today is the Drug Enforcement Agency is enacting its changes it announced about 6 weeks ago. That means that the hydrocodone has been switched from a Schedule III to a Schedule II drug. So what does all that mean? Well, the changes are impacting thousands of people who rely on the painkiller because it makes it a class of drug that falls in with methadone and morphine. So it's going to be more heavily regulated. And that means the days of having your prescription renewals and refills emailed or called into the pharmacy are gone. You must now go to your doctor, have a handwritten prescription filled out for you, and then you take that to the pharmacy, and the pharmacist will take care of the prescription at that point. We spoke to some pharmacists right after the announcement came down, and they do anticipate some extra lines and a little bit of waiting as they get everything figured out, but they've been talking to patients ever since the announcement came out and reminding them to get with their doctors and figure out a plan of approach on this. They do expect it to add a little more cost to the whole process, but they say in the end, we're looking at something that could help save hundreds of thousands of lives, and that is more the focal point regarding this change. So again, today, hydrocodone has become a Schedule II drug. Stricter regulations regarding the prescriptions and how they're handled. And you can find out more details by speaking with your doctor directly or your pharmacist. Reporting live in Asheville, Victoria Dunkle, News 13.
Happening today, rule changes for the thousands of people who count on prescription painkillers.
News 13's Victoria Dunkle is live, outlining those changes surrounding hydrocodone. And Vic, many people need new prescriptions starting today.
That's exactly right, because hydrocodone starting today is now a Schedule II drug. That means it is lumped in with other drugs like morphine and methadone. And the reasoning for it is why we're standing outside the emergency room at a hospital like this, because hydrocodone and drugs like it are responsible for more than half of the emergency room visits for drug abuse and misuse in the United States. That's according to the CDC. In fact, 55% of drug overdose deaths are tied to pharmaceuticals. So in August, the DEA announced these changes. I mean, this is the most commonly prescribed painkiller we're talking about here. Hydrocodone, more than 125 million prescriptions for the drug alone in 2012. And the DEA is concerned about the spike in the number of people getting their hands on it who aren't supposed to have it, either being sold in the black market on the street or people just getting a hold of it out of the medicine cabinets at home. So what's going to happen now is people who legitimately need this to manage pain and keep themselves on their medication are going to need a new prescription, and no more will they be able to have their doctor call the pharmacy or email that prescription in. They will have to go to their doctor's office. They will have to get a written prescription and then take it to the pharmacist. Now, the pharmacists say that they are expecting to see a little uptick in the business, and of course the long lines will be there a little bit at the beginning, but it should work itself out, they say. And what they're expecting is that this in the long run will help increase the safety when it comes to the abuse of hydrocodone and similar class drugs. Reporting live in Asheville, Victoria Dunkle, News 13.